You're under arrest for resisting right now.
I did not do anything. Stop touching me.
Put your hands behind your back now.
Help me. Somebody please help me.
Get the cuffs on. I got her.
No.
It started with 90 minutes in a locked room. It ended with a woman bleeding out on an asphalt lot. This is the story of Elena Reyes, a woman seeking simple privacy in a public place. Her life unraveled entirely over the span of a single scorching Phoenix morning. The events that followed were captured on body camera footage, documenting an utterly avoidable tragedy rooted in procedure, misunderstanding, and a swift, irreversible escalation of force. The incident began not with a criminal act, but with a request for basic human concern. A concerned manager called the police only to check on a customer who had been out of sight for too long. But by the time the first officer arrived, the simple act of checking on someone's well-being had transformed into a fatal, high-stakes confrontation. The initial intention was kindness, but the resulting outcome was finality. Before we dive into the details of this escalating encounter, tell me, where are you following this story from? Drop your city and state or country in the comments below. The date was July 14, 2025. The time was 7:45 a.m. The air in Phoenix, Arizona already felt thick and suffocating, even inside the sterile confines of the burger joint. The night shift manager had just finished cleaning the fryer when he noticed the discrepancy. A single, small restroom was still locked, its occupant silently hidden away for over an hour and a half. This was not unusual behavior for the downtown area, but the manager's gut told him something was wrong. He worried about a potential medical emergency, or perhaps someone dealing with a crisis. He placed the 911 call, stressing that he was requesting a welfare check. He did not report a disturbance, nor did he allege any crime. He simply needed assistance confirming the safety of his customer, a 32-year-old woman named Elena Reyes. The manager provided a description and confirmed that she had only been lingering. He emphasized that he was not seeking her immediate removal or punishment. The information was relayed to Officer Jace, who was patrolling nearby. Officer Jace was dispatched to the scene, expecting a standard low-priority call. He arrived at the fast food restaurant minutes later, the air heavy with the smell of old grease and dry desert heat. He approached the restroom door, his body camera activated, prepared only for a routine check. He had no way of knowing this trivial assignment would become the defining moment of his career, permanently intertwining his actions with Elena Reyes's last moments on Earth. Officer Jace arrived and took up position directly in front of the locked, single-occupant restroom. He did not attempt to speak softly or assess the situation from a distance. Instead, the officer immediately began a loud, insistent rapping on the door, demanding the occupant exit immediately. His tone was professional, but lacked patience, injecting sudden urgency into the calm restaurant environment. Inside, Elena Reyes was struggling. Family later confirmed she lived with diagnosed bipolar disorder, a condition that sometimes manifested in intense, overwhelming moments of distress and disorientation. The unexpected banging shattered her momentary sense of isolation and safety. Her heart pounded as she realized the police were outside. She knew she had only been seeking quiet, but the demand felt like an accusation. Despite her rising anxiety, Elena chose compliance. She unlocked the door and stepped out, blinking slightly in the harsh fluorescent lighting. She made a direct path to the sink, visibly shaking but attempting to wash her hands and gather her belongings. She was attempting to comply, showing the officer she was ready to leave the establishment and end the incident immediately. She had successfully navigated the overwhelming distress and was preparing to exit quietly, just as the officer had demanded. But before she could take 2 steps toward the exit, the officer stopped her cold. The welfare check, moments after confirming Elena was alive and well, was abruptly terminated. The officer was already pivoting the entire scenario into a different, unexpected category, one that would shift the power dynamic completely and fatally change the course of Elena's morning. Officer Jace looked Elena up and down. He bypassed the manager's initial request for a welfare check entirely. Instead, he announced to Elena that she was being permanently trespassed, banned entirely from the property. This was an action the concerned manager had never requested or authorized during the 911 call. The manager only wanted to ensure she was safe. Elena paused, confused by the severity of the unrequested ban. She looked toward the exit, hoping to simply walk away and avoid further conflict. However, Officer Jace stepped into her path, blocking her exit. He informed her that to process the permanent ban, he required her formal identification. This was the critical moment of escalation, a requirement that served no legitimate public safety purpose, but rather shifted the officer's objective. Officer Jace likely intended to use the arbitrary trespass order as a pretext to confirm Elena's identity and run her name through police databases. He was fishing for outstanding warrants, attempting to turn a welfare check into an arrest opportunity. Elena had committed no crime. She had not resisted, nor had she threatened anyone. She was simply lingering and now attempting to leave. Yet the officer introduced a requirement that demanded total submission to his procedural demands. He insisted on the ID, forcing the situation to stand still. Elena was now trapped in the small entryway of the burger joint, no longer trying to hide, but desperately trying to escape the attention of the man who now held her freedom hostage. The officer's simple demand for a name tag became the inescapable barrier standing between Elena and her home.
The situation grew rapidly more tense. Elena, feeling the onset of intense panic associated with her bipolar disorder, struggled to comply with the ID demand. She repeatedly provided her first name, Elena, and confirmed her surname, Reyes, but when pressed for her precise date of birth, she hesitated, visibly struggling to recall the exact digits under the stress of the uniformed authority figure standing over her. The officer, interpreting her hesitation as deliberate evasion rather than psychological distress, immediately accused her of lying. He insisted she was concealing her identity to avoid arrest. Elena attempted to explain her struggle, repeating that she just wanted to go home and that she wasn't doing anything wrong. Legally, since she was not accused of a crime and was attempting to leave, she had the right to disengage and walk away from the interaction. However, Officer Jace was not willing to allow that disengagement. He physically steered her away from the exit and toward his patrol vehicle parked outside. He insisted she needed to verify her identity immediately before she could leave. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I just want to go home," she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch and urgency. She repeated that she was compliant, but that she was struggling with the specific details he demanded. The officer, ignoring her emotional distress and her legal right to exit, then delivered the final, irreversible threat. He warned her that if she failed to fully cooperate with his ID demands, she would be placed under arrest. The charge would not be related to the original welfare check or the unrequested trespass, but for resisting arrest, an offense manufactured entirely based on her refusal to yield to his unnecessary procedure. The threat hung heavy in the air, the sound of the approaching siren signaling that backup was already on its way, hardening the officer's resolve.
The arrival of Officer Knox's patrol car marked the true point of no return. As Officer Jace continued to try and force Elena closer to his own vehicle, she planted her feet and refused to lean against the hood as instructed. This was her final, small act of resistance against the escalating demands and threats. She refused to submit to the pose of a criminal when she felt she had done nothing wrong. Officer Jace, frustrated by her hesitation and fueled by the presence of his backup, immediately announced that Elena Reyes was officially under arrest. He did not wait for her to acknowledge the order. Instead, he reached out and attempted to physically restrain her, grabbing her arm tightly. Elena recoiled sharply, attempting to pull away from the sudden physical contact. This involuntary reaction, a desperate attempt to avoid being handled, was all the justification the officers needed.
Body camera footage from both officers captured the terrifying sequence that followed. Officer Knox had barely stepped out of his car before the announcement of arrest was made. Seeing the struggle, Officer Knox immediately rushed to his partner's aid. The two uniformed men, significantly larger than the smaller woman, instantly combined their force. They tackled Elena violently and swiftly to the hot, rough asphalt pavement outside the restaurant. Elena cried out as she hit the ground, the impact jarring her whole body. The situation had morphed from a quiet welfare check to a brutal physical confrontation in mere seconds, leaving Elena pinned beneath the weight of two officers who were determined to subdue her at any cost.
Pinned against the pavement, Elena struggled frantically, overwhelmed by pain and terror. Her movements were attempts to escape the pressure and the pain, not attempts to fight the officers. Yet her flailing was instantly classified as active resistance. The officers immediately intensified their efforts to gain control. The body cam footage later confirmed the shocking brutality of the subsequent actions. While struggling to pull her arms behind her back for handcuffing, the officers were seen administering closed-fist strikes and elbows directed toward Elena's head and face. Each blow landed with sickening force, intended to shock her into submission. She screamed and cried out, her voice ragged and desperate, clearly overwhelmed by the violence being inflicted upon her. The officers continued to utilize force, concentrating their weight and their strikes on her upper body and head. They were focused only on securing the handcuffs, viewing her continued movement as a justification for the sustained assault. The asphalt was unforgiving, and the struggle was prolonged. The short bursts of violence continued until Elena's energy finally gave out. Exhausted, battered, and bleeding heavily from multiple injuries to her face, Elena finally went limp, allowing the officers to pull her arms behind her back and cinch the handcuffs tightly around her wrists. The confrontation, spurred by an unnecessary ID demand, had resulted in a devastating display of force that shattered the calm of the morning and left Elena critically injured on the ground. The simple welfare check had achieved the exact opposite of its intent.
Once secured in handcuffs, the officers finally pulled Elena up and sat her against a nearby concrete wall. She was in severe distress. Her face was visibly contused, rapidly swelling, and blood was running down her cheek from a laceration near her eye. She was hyperventilating, struggling to catch her breath after the intense struggle and the forceful blows she sustained. Recognizing the severity of her visible injuries, the officers finally radioed for paramedics, escalating the medical nature of the call far beyond the initial welfare request. While they waited for the ambulance, Elena remained slumped against the wall, her energy completely spent, her breathing shallow and irregular. She was now fully in police custody, secured and immobile, but the physical damage was done. Paramedics arrived and assessed her critical condition. She was quickly loaded onto the ambulance for immediate transport to the nearest trauma center. During the short ride to the hospital, Elena went into severe medical distress. Her breathing failed, and her heart began to struggle under the immense physiological strain. Despite the tireless efforts of the hospital staff, Elena Reyes could not be saved. She was pronounced deceased at 9:45 a.m. that same morning, barely 2 hours after the officer first banged on the restroom door. The official cause of her in-custody death was immediately shrouded in investigation, leaving glaring, unanswered questions about the specific mechanism of death. Was it due to blunt force trauma, positional asphyxia during the restraint, or a medical crisis exacerbated by the violent struggle? This entire incident, the confrontation that cost Elena Reyes her life, was launched based on a request to confirm her safety. It pivoted entirely on an officer's non-mandatory demand for identification, which led to a manufactured charge of resisting, culminating in a brutal takedown caught on camera. The tragic truth is that Elena was not a criminal. She was a customer in distress who only wanted to be left alone. She was killed in the process of complying with a false choice: identify herself or face arrest. Her distress cost her everything. This sequence of events proves that in some situations, the procedures designed to ensure order become the greatest threat to life itself. Do you think justice was served in the death of Elena Reyes? If you enjoyed this video, please kindly subscribe, share, and like for more videos like this. Thank you.